Although we're not related by blood, I witnessed something utterly cruel unfold at my beloved daughter Eleanor's wedding reception. It wasn't scrawled on a nameplate, but delivered with chilling precision in front of everyone. During the toasts, Mr. Thorne, the groom Julian's father, took the microphone. His words started smoothly enough, praising the venue, the lovely couple. But then, his tone shifted, a subtle condescension creeping in as he mentioned my profession. Arthur Graham, a master plumber, he announced, letting the title hang in the air with false respect. A skilled tradesman, certainly. Eleanor is a wonderful young woman, truly. One can only imagine how much brighter her future might have been had she been raised in an environment like ours, with the benefits of a proper education and upbringing. A wave of stunned silence washed over the opulent ballroom. I saw sympathetic glances, confused frowns, and a few smug nods from the Thorne side of the family. My hands clenched under the table, knuckles white, but my face remained impassive. Later, during the gift presentation, the disparity was brutally clear. Julian unwrapped a gleaming prestige chrono watch, the latest model, presented with fanfare by his parents. Then, Mrs. Thorne turned to Eleanor, handing her a small, carelessly wrapped package. Inside was a stack of used self-help books, dog-eared and worn. "Here you go, dear," Mrs. Thorne said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness that didn't quite mask the contempt. "Perhaps these will help you acquire the refinement necessary to be a Thorne." Eleanor's face went pale, her eyes filling with a mixture of shock, humiliation, and rising anger. Julian stood beside her, offering no defense, his silence a form of assent. Seeing the tears welling in her eyes, my daughter reached for my hand, her grip firm. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. "Let's go home." "You're right, Eleanor," I replied, my voice low and steady, betraying none of the fury boiling inside me. And just like that, amidst the stunned silence and hushed whispers, we turned our backs on the glittering charade and walked out of the venue. But this calculated humiliation was only the prelude to a far more shocking revelation that would unfold just days later. My name is Arthur Graham. I dropped out of high school and became a plumber's apprentice, eventually earning my master plumber license through years of hard work and dedication. It's an honest living, one I've never been ashamed of. One day, the steady rhythm of my life shattered. While I was on a job wrestling with a stubborn pipe fitting, my phone rang. It was the hospital where my wife, Catherine, had been admitted a few days prior. Her condition, initially thought to be just exhaustion, had taken a sudden, drastic turn for the worse. They told me she was in critical condition. Panic seized me. I dropped my tools, apologized to the client, and raced to pick up my daughter, Eleanor, from daycare. We sped towards the hospital, my heart pounding against my ribs. When we burst into the room, Catherine was barely conscious, her breathing shallow and labored. The sterile scent of the room, the rhythmic beeping of machines, it all felt surreal, a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Refusing to accept the grim reality unfolding before me, I gripped Catherine's frail hand, her skin cool beneath my calloused fingers. I kept calling her name, desperate to pull her back from the edge. "Catherine, can you hear me?" My voice cracked. "It's me, Arthur. Look, Eleanor's here too." At the sound of our voices, especially Eleanor's small, tearful greeting, Catherine's eyelids fluttered open. Her lips moved, whispering something faint lost in the beep of the monitors. Then, the faint pressure of her hand and mine slackened, faded completely. A profound stillness settled over her. I knew, with a certainty that hollowed me out, that she was gone. Catherine was only 25 years old. Far, far too young. The thought echoed in the sudden, deafening silence. If only we had realized sooner how serious it was. If only I had insisted she see a doctor earlier, pushed past her reassurances that she was just tired. Waves of regret washed over me, relentless and cruel. even knowing it was too late for if-onlys. I still couldn't grasp the finality of it. We'd only been married a few precious years. Weren't we supposed to build a lifetime of memories together? Watch Eleanor grow? The future we'd planned dissolved like smoke. I sank to my knees beside her bed, the dam finally breaking, and sobbed uncontrollably. A moment later, a small pair of warm hands gently touched my tear-streaked face. "Daddy, are you okay?" My 4-year-old daughter, Eleanor, looked up at me, her own eyes wide with confusion and concern, trying to wipe away my tears with her tiny fingers. "Thank you, Eleanor," I managed, pulling her close, her small body a fragile anchor in the storm. On the day of the funeral, I moved through a fog of grief, greeting relatives mechanically, shaking hands, accepting condolences. The scent of lilies filled the air, mingling with the hushed murmurs. Staring at Catherine's smiling photograph, surrounded by sprays of white flowers, it still felt unreal, like watching a scene from someone else's life. Just then, my Uncle Robert, whom I hadn't seen in some time, approached me hesitantly. He glanced around, ensuring no one was too close, before speaking in a low voice. "Arthur, can we talk for a moment?" I nodded numbly, following him to a quieter corner of the room. He let out a heavy sigh before beginning. "I'm truly sorry for your loss, Arthur. Nobody expected this. She was so young." "Yeah," I mumbled, the word catching in my throat. Words felt inadequate, useless. "At least you were there with her at the end," he offered, trying to find some solace. "That's something." I forced myself to respond, trying to maintain some semblance of composure, but my voice trembled, betraying the effort. "Yes, I'm grateful for that." He placed a heavy hand on my shoulder, his expression sympathetic but practical. "You must be devastated, I know. But perhaps this is a time to think pragmatically about Eleanor's future." "Eleanor?" I repeated, confused. "What do you mean, Uncle Robert?" A frown creased my brow. He hesitated, shifting his weight, then looked me directly in the eye, his expression earnest. "Arthur, have you considered letting Catherine's mother in New York City raise Eleanor?" "What?" The suggestion blindsided me. "Think about it," he pressed gently. "The schools are much better in NYC. She could get a far better education there than out here in upstate New York. And honestly, son, raising her all by yourself while working your job, it's going to be incredibly tough." I stood there, speechless, trying to process his words. Before I could respond, my Aunt Helen, who had sidled up beside her husband, chimed in sharply. "Arthur, Robert is right. There's simply no way you can manage raising that child alone, working the hours you do as a plumber." Her tone was less sympathetic, more judgmental. "Besides," she added, lowering her voice slightly, but with unmistakable emphasis, "she's not even your biological child, is she? She was Catherine's daughter from before you." Her words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. A murmur of agreement rose from other nearby relatives who had drifted closer. "She's not your blood," someone muttered. "It'll only get harder as she gets older, you know. The teenage years." Another added ominously. "Love is enough." I tried to interject, my voice tight with rising anger and hurt. "Even without a blood connection, love alone doesn't pay the bills, Arthur." Aunt Helen cut me off, her expression severe. "Parenting takes more than good intentions. It takes experience, stability, and a mother's touch is important. You can't possibly provide all that on your own." I took a deep, steadying breath, trying to rein in my emotions. "I understand your concerns, truly, but—" "No, you don't understand," Aunt Helen interrupted again, her voice rising slightly. "You're still a young man, Arthur. You need to think about your own life, your future. Leaving Eleanor with Catherine's mother is the sensible thing to do. It would be best for everyone, especially the girl." I looked around the circle of faces, Uncle Robert looking uncomfortable but nodding, Aunt Helen stern, the others murmuring agreement. They all seemed to think they knew what was best. In that instant, something inside me, stretched taut by grief and exhaustion, finally snapped. Eleanor may not share my blood, I stated, my voice suddenly clear and strong, cutting through the hushed tones. The room fell silent. But she is my daughter, and I love her with everything I have. I met each of their gazes, holding them steady. I will raise her myself. That was a promise I made to Catherine, etched into my heart, and it's a promise I fully intend to keep. Uncle Robert opened his mouth as if to argue, but I raised a hand, stopping him. Let me be perfectly clear. Eleanor is my daughter, I repeated, emphasizing each word. Blood doesn't make a family. Love does. We are family. So please, stop discussing her future as if she's some inconvenient burden to be passed off. Feeling their judgmental eyes on my back, I turned away from them and walked back towards Catherine's portrait, its gentle smile a stark contrast to the harshness I'd just faced. Catherine, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. I'll keep my promise. I swear I'll raise Eleanor to be strong and kind, just like you. I'll give her everything I've got. I met Catherine near the end of spring, during a community cleanup event downtown. The air was warm, carrying the scent of blooming flowers from the nearby park. We both volunteered, assigned to the same patch of riverbank, picking up litter. Amidst the shared work and casual conversation, something clicked. Need a hand with that bag? I'd asked, noticing her struggling slightly. Oh, thanks. It's heavier than it looks, she replied with a laugh that instantly brightened the day. That was how it started. Catherine had a radiance, a warmth like the sun, something I, quieter and more reserved, felt drawn to. She coaxed me out of my shell, showed me a lighter side of life I hadn't known. Our friendship blossomed into something deeper over shared coffee breaks and evening walks after volunteering. But then, after about 2 months of growing closeness, Catherine asked to meet me at a quiet cafe near her apartment. There was a seriousness in her tone that put me on edge. Arthur, there's something important I need to tell you, she began, her usual bright smile absent. Sitting across from me, she kept her gaze fixed on her clasped hands resting on the table. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between us. For a moment, I couldn't speak, stunned into silence. Pregnant? I finally managed, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She explained that she was carrying another man's child. It had happened shortly before we met. The relationship had ended badly, and he was no longer in the picture. It was a complication I had never anticipated. As Catherine confessed the situation, my mind reeled. Confusion, shock, a pang of something akin to betrayal, though I knew I had no right to feel that way, washed over me. We had only known each other a short time, building something tentative and hopeful. The idea of suddenly becoming a father into another man's child, it was overwhelming. What are you planning to do? I asked, the question heavy with unspoken implications. Catherine finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. I deeply regret the choices that led me here, Arthur. So much. I'm going to terminate the pregnancy. Please don't worry about it. Her words, meant to reassure me, left me with a tangle of conflicting emotions. Terminate. Oh, Arthur, I'm so sorry for burdening you with this, she choked out, fresh tears spilling. You deserve someone uncomplicated, someone better than me. Before she could spiral further, I reached across the small table and gently took her hand. Her skin was cold, trembling slightly. Wait, Catherine. Stop. Don't talk about yourself like that. She looked up, surprised, her tear-filled eyes meeting mine. Yes, I was shocked, I admitted honestly. This is a lot to take in. But these past couple of months, getting to know you, I've realized how much I want to be with you, Catherine. Her breath hitched, and a flicker of hope appeared in her gaze. Really? She whispered. Even knowing this? Even with someone like me? Yeah, really, I affirmed, squeezing her hand gently. Look, most people think family means blood relatives, shared DNA. But I grew up in a family connected by blood that was completely fractured, cold. Real family, the kind that matters, is built on love, support, commitment, not just biology. Catherine listened quietly, her tears slowly subsiding. I can't pretend to fully understand everything you're feeling right now, I continued softly. But I want to stand by you, Catherine, through whatever comes next. And this new life, I want to help you raise this child. Together, I want us to be a family. You, me, and the baby. Catherine stared at me, her expression shifting from despair to astonishment, then blooming into a fragile joy. Arthur, she breathed, her voice thick with emotion. Honestly, I almost didn't tell you. I considered just dealing with it quietly. But this baby, it felt like it was meant to be somehow, and I couldn't make that final decision. More than anything, she added, looking me straight in the eye, I couldn't bear the thought of keeping secrets from you. You're the most honest, decent man I've ever known. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you for accepting all of me. A wave of tenderness washed over me. I leaned forward and gently wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. From now on, we face everything together, I murmured against her hair. The three of us. And so, unexpectedly, a new chapter of our life began. While supporting Catherine through the physical and emotional journey of her pregnancy, we started planning our wedding. It was a simple affair, just close friends. Not everyone understood or approved, whispers followed us. I knew, but Catherine and I leaned on each other, our bond strengthening with every shared hope and hurdle. Then, as the crisp autumn air settled over upstate New York, Eleanor was born. I was there, holding Catherine's hand, whispering encouragement. Later, standing by the nursery window, I looked at the tiny bundle swaddled in pink. When the nurse let me hold her, I gently touched Eleanor's impossibly small hand. Her tiny fingers instinctively curled around my calloused index finger, a surprisingly strong grip. In that instant, the lingering fear and uncertainty that had shadowed my heart melted away, replaced by a fierce, overwhelming wave of protectiveness and love. I'm going to protect this child, I vowed silently, looking down at her peaceful face. I'm going to dedicate my life to her. That was the moment I truly became her father. Catherine battled some darkness after Eleanor's birth, what the doctors called postpartum struggles, but we faced it together. I learned to manage night feedings, endless diaper changes, rocking a crying baby back to sleep. Neither of us had any real experience, but watching Eleanor grow day by day, her first smile, her first giggle brought a profound joy that eclipsed any fatigue or frustration. Arthur, thank you, Catherine would say sometimes, her eyes filled with gratitude during quiet moments. If you hadn't been here, I don't know what I would have done. I gently silenced her worries, pressing a finger to her lips. Don't dwell on the past, Catherine. We have a future now, with Eleanor. Let's promise to fill it with as much laughter and happiness as we possibly can. Catherine would nod, tears glistening in her eyes, and squeeze my hand. There were undoubtedly tough times, financial worries, sleepless nights, the juggling act of work and parenthood. But our shared love for Eleanor and our belief in each other saw us through. Even without the traditional ties of blood, the bond of love in our small family grew stronger, deeper, and more resilient with every passing day. But that fragile happiness was cruelly short-lived. Catherine's illness was discovered far too late. At first, we dismissed her growing fatigue as the lingering effects of childbirth and the demands of a new baby. I'm just a little tired, Catherine kept insisting, waving away my concerns. But gradually, she started needing to lie down more often, the vibrant energy slowly draining from her. Her days were a whirlwind of caring for Eleanor, managing the household chores, trying to be everything to everyone. Finding time and making time to go to the hospital seemed impossible, always pushed aside for more immediate needs. I'll be fine, she'd assure me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I'll feel better soon, you'll see. But her face grew paler, thinner day by day. Worry not at me. I urged her repeatedly to see a doctor, offering to take time off work, arrange childcare. But Catherine always had a reason to postpone it. I won't make it back in time to pick Eleanor up from daycare, she'd say, or maybe next week, things are just too hectic right now. Even on weekends, something always seemed to come up. Eleanor needed something. I had an emergency plumbing call. And before we knew it, precious time slipped away. Then, one ordinary morning, while Catherine was preparing breakfast in the kitchen, she suddenly collapsed. The clatter of the pan hitting the floor echoed the shattering of our world. We called an ambulance, the siren's wail a terrifying soundtrack as we rushed her to the hospital. After a battery of urgent tests, the doctors delivered the devastating news. The illness, insidious and aggressive, was already too advanced. Treatment options were limited, the prognosis grim. If only you'd noticed the symptoms sooner, the doctor said, his words professional yet carrying an unintentional sting. If only you'd brought her in earlier. Those words pierced me like a shard of ice. My own failure to insist, to prioritize her health over the daily grind, felt like a heavy stone in my gut. Even after she was admitted, weak and frail in the hospital bed, Catherine's primary concern wasn't for herself, but for Eleanor and me. "I'm so sorry, Arthur," she whispered, her voice thin. "I should have taken better care of myself. For both of you." I couldn't find any words of comfort, choked by guilt and grief. Caught up in the relentless demands of work and raising a young child, I had seen the warning signs, her pallor, her fatigue, but I hadn't acted decisively enough. I hadn't forced the issue. That knowledge is a burden I will carry for the rest of my life. After Catherine passed away, I threw myself into work and raising Eleanor, the twin pillars holding up my collapsing world. Returning each evening to the quiet house, thick with memories of Catherine's laughter and presence, was an agony. But Eleanor, my bright, resilient little girl, became my reason to keep going. "Daddy, welcome home," she'd shout, launching herself at me the moment I walked through the door after picking her up from daycare. Her hug, the simple, unconditional warmth of it, could momentarily banish the bone-deep exhaustion of a long day spent wrestling pipes and fixtures. Having dropped out of high school young, I'd been on my own for years, so basic self-sufficiency, cooking, cleaning, laundry wasn't entirely new. But juggling the demanding schedule of a master plumber with the responsibilities of single parenthood was a challenge unlike any I'd ever faced. It stretched me thinner than I thought possible. "Eleanor, how about spaghetti for dinner tonight?" I'd ask, trying to inject cheerfulness into my tired voice. Her eyes would light up. "Yay, Daddy's spaghetti," she'd exclaim. She'd rush to the kitchen, clamber onto a chair, and put on the small apron Catherine had made for her. "I want to help, Daddy." Seeing her eagerness, her small face serious with concentration, always brought a weary smile to my lips. "Okay, sweetie. Thanks. Can you help me stir the sauce very carefully?" As we cooked together, Eleanor would chatter happily about her day, the songs they sang, the pictures she drew, the playground dramas. Listening to her innocent stories, watching her small hands carefully stirring the pot, filled the empty spaces in the house, and in my heart, with a profound, anchoring sense of purpose. My routine became relentless. Finish work, rush to daycare pickup, head home. No time to sit down, no time to rest. Straight into chores, dinner preparation, bath time, story time, bed. It was an exhausting, non-stop cycle, day after day. "Daddy, let's play with the rubber duckies in the bath tonight," Eleanor would demand, already running towards the bathroom, shedding clothes as she went. Dragging my weary body, aching from hours spent contorted under sinks or maneuvering heavy equipment, I'd follow her. "All right, princess, but not for too long tonight, okay? Daddy's tired." Later, reading her favorite picture book for the 100th time, her small head nestled against my shoulder, her breathing growing steady and deep. I'd reflect on the day, on the endless demands, and the fleeting moments of joy. "Daddy, can we build a block tower tomorrow?" She'd murmur sleepily, her eyes fluttering closed in the middle of the story. Looking at her peaceful, innocent face bathed in the soft glow of the nightlight, my resolve would harden. Hearing her call me D, feeling the absolute trust in her sleepy voice, gave me the strength to face another demanding day. It fueled me, kept me putting one foot in front of the other, no matter how steep the climb felt. For someone like me, who grew up without the warmth and security of a loving family, Eleanor wasn't just my daughter. She was the greatest, most unexpected gift life had ever given me. She was my anchor, my purpose, my everything. Then one afternoon, I came home from a particularly grueling job to find Eleanor waiting by the door, clutching a piece of construction paper, vibrating with excitement. "Look, Daddy, look. Miss Davison said I did a great job today." She proudly held up a drawing, a colorful, slightly lopsided house with a smiling sun overhead. Across the top, Miss Davison had written, "Excellent work, Eleanor," in neat cursive. "Wow, Eleanor, that's amazing," I exclaimed, genuinely impressed. "Your house looks so cheerful, and look how neat your coloring is." I crouched down to admire it properly. Eleanor beamed, her chest puffing out with pride. "I want to draw pictures just like the ones in my storybooks, Daddy," she declared. Her innocent ambition brought a familiar lump to my throat. "Well, you keep practicing like this, and maybe you will," I said, gently ruffling her hair. "How about we get some more paper and crayons this weekend?" "Yes, please." On weekends, when I wasn't on call for emergencies, we often escaped to the nearby state park. Pushing Eleanor on the swing, higher and higher, her delighted shrieks echoing through the tall pines, my thoughts inevitably drifted to Catherine. "Your mom would be so incredibly proud of the smart, funny little girl you're becoming, you know." The words slipped out before I could stop them, thick with emotion. Eleanor paused mid-swing, looking up at the vast blue sky peeking through the leaves. "Is Mommy watching us right now, Daddy?" she asked, her voice soft and curious. "Yes, sweetie. I'm absolutely sure she is," I answered, my voice catching slightly. "And she's smiling, seeing how happy you are, how high you can swing." Eleanor grinned, a gap-toothed, radiant smile, and pumped her legs with renewed vigor. "Mommy, watch me. Look how high I can go." Her joyful shout soared upwards, a poignant mix of innocence and loss echoing through the quiet woods. Balancing the physical demands of plumbing with the emotional and practical demands of single parenthood was never easy. It was a constant tightrope walk. There were days, weeks even, when the exhaustion felt crushing, when the loneliness was a physical ache, when I felt utterly overwhelmed and tempted to just give up, crawl into bed, and pull the covers over my head. But then Eleanor would flash that infectious smile, or wrap her small arms around my neck in a fierce hug, or simply call me Daddy, in that trusting way of hers, and somehow it would reignite the flickering flame inside me. Her love was my fuel, my resilience. One quiet evening, long after Eleanor had drifted off to sleep, her favorite stuffed bear tucked beside her, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a framed photo of Catherine, laughing, vibrant, full of life. I quietly spoke to the image, the silence of the house amplifying my hushed words. "Catherine, our little girl. She's growing up so fast. She's funny and smart and so full of light, just like you were." A familiar ache tightened my chest. "God, I miss you so much it hurts. Every single day. But having Eleanor, she gives me the courage to face each morning, to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for leaving me this incredible, beautiful piece of yourself." When Eleanor turned 6, I knew it was time. I couldn't shield her from the truth forever, and secrets felt like a betrayal of the honest relationship I wanted us to have. One evening, nestled on the worn armchair for our usual bedtime story, I gently closed the book and held her close. Eleanor, sweetie, Daddy has something important he needs to tell you. She looked up at me curiously, her big, trusting eyes searching my face. What is it, Daddy? I took a deep breath, my heart pounding nervously. Well, you know how much Daddy loves you, right? More than anything in the world. She nodded solemnly. And you know Mummy loved you very, very much too. Another nod. Well, I continued, choosing my words carefully. You know how some families have a mommy and a daddy who make a baby together? Yeah. Sometimes families happen in different ways. You know, you actually have two daddies. Her eyes widened slightly. Two daddies? Really? She asked, tilting her head. That's right, I confirmed gently. There's me, your everyday daddy, the one who tucks you in and makes spaghetti. I tried for a small smile. And then there's another daddy, the one who helped put the first tiny seed of you inside Mommy's tummy a long time ago, even before Mommy and I met. Eleanor looked thoughtful for a moment, processing this new information. Then, she wrapped her arms around my neck and declared firmly, But you're my real daddy. Her simple, unwavering conviction sent a wave of warmth flooding through me, easing the knot of anxiety in my chest. That's right, sweetheart, I whispered, hugging her tightly. I will always, always be your daddy. After that initial conversation, the topic surfaced occasionally, naturally, without any awkwardness. One sunny afternoon at the park, while sitting side by side on the swings, Eleanor suddenly asked, Daddy, I have two daddies, remember? That's right, Eleanor, I replied, pushing off gently. But, she continued, kicking her legs, I think you're my real daddy. I smiled. Why do you think that, sweetie? Because you're the one who's always here, she stated simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. You're the one who reads me stories and fixes my bike. Her unquestioning acceptance, her focus on love and presence rather than biology, was a profound lesson in itself. Time marched relentlessly onward. Eleanor navigated childhood, adolescence, and then, somehow, she was graduating from Hudson State University with a degree in social work, funded largely by scholarships she'd fiercely competed for and my own carefully managed savings. She landed a respectable job as a caseworker for the city's social services department in New York City. Living apart from the daughter I'd poured my entire life into raising brought a complex mix of overwhelming pride and a deep, aching loneliness. The house felt too quiet, too empty. One Tuesday evening, as I was reheating leftovers after a long day unclogging drains, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the caller, ID Eleanor. Hey, Daddy, is this an okay time to talk? Her voice sounded bright, but with an undercurrent of nerves I recognized instantly. Eleanor. Hi. Usually, I just get a text. I teased gently. This is a pleasant surprise. Everything okay? Everything's great. Better than great, actually. Listen, I was thinking of coming home for a visit next month, and, well, there's someone I'd really like you to meet. Her slight hesitation confirmed my suspicion. Someone you want me to meet? I repeated, keeping my tone light, though my heart gave a sudden lurch. Yeah, she admitted, her voice dropping slightly. I've been seeing someone. Seriously. I see, I said slowly. A beat of silence. Are you mad, Daddy? Her voice trembled almost imperceptibly. Mad? No, sweetheart, of course not. I reassured her quickly. Just a little surprised, maybe. Taken aback. My little girl, all grown up and serious about someone. I tried to inject warmth into my voice, pushing down the irrational pang of possessiveness. Really? Oh, thank goodness. I was so nervous to tell you. Relief flooded her tone. So, I prompted gently. Tell me about him. What's he like? Oh, Daddy, he's wonderful. His name is Julian Thorne. He's kind and smart and really driven, you know? Works incredibly hard. And he treats me so well, with so much respect. Well, that sounds promising. I said sincerely. If he makes you happy, Eleanor, and treats you right, then that's what matters most to me. Thank you, Daddy. That means a lot. We were actually thinking maybe we could come up together for the visit. I'd really love for you two to meet properly. All right then, I agreed, forcing enthusiasm. I'll look forward to it. Tell me the dates. Hearing Eleanor talk about building her own future, taking these significant steps, it filled me with immense pride, but also that familiar, bittersweet pang of knowing my central role in her life was naturally shifting. A month later, Eleanor arrived, not alone this time. When the doorbell rang, I took a deep breath, smoothing down my work shirt, feeling an uncharacteristic nervousness as I opened the door. Daddy, I'm home. Eleanor's cheerful greeting filled the small entryway, instantly easing some of my tension. Welcome back, Eleanor. I smiled, hugging her tightly before turning my attention to the young man standing beside her. He was tall and impeccably dressed in a way that spoke of money and privilege, a sharp contrast to my own worn jeans and flannel shirt. He stepped forward, extending a hand, his smile polite practiced. Mr. Graham, it's a pleasure to meet you, sir. I'm Julian Thorne. Julian, thanks for making the drive up from the city, I replied, shaking his firm hand. I'm Arthur Graham, Eleanor's dad. Julian Thorne was undeniably polished. He carried himself with an easy confidence that bordered on arrogance, though his words were respectful enough. He worked, Eleanor had explained, in business development for Thorne Estates, his family's large, successful real estate development company. I couldn't help but feel a flicker of inadequacy, keenly aware of the difference in our worlds. Please come on in, I said, stepping back to let them enter the modest house I'd lived in for decades. We settled in the living room, the familiar furniture suddenly looking a bit shabby under Julian's discerning gaze. I offered them drinks, and we began the slightly awkward dance of getting to know you conversation. So, Julian, Eleanor tells me you work for your family's company Thorne Estates? I began, aiming for a calm, neutral tone. Yes, sir. After graduating from Prescott University, I joined the company full-time, he confirmed smoothly. I'm currently in the planning division, focusing on new luxury residential projects. Prescott University, impressive. I nodded. A prestigious, expensive private institution, a world away from my own high school dropout status or Eleanor's hard-won scholarship to Hudson State. And you studied? Business administration, sir, with a minor in finance. Julian actually launched a tech startup while he was still at Prescott. Eleanor interjected proudly, her eyes shining as she looked at him. Is that so? I asked, turning back to Julian. He gave a self-deprecating shrug, though it didn't quite ring true. Yes, a few friends and I developed an organizational app for students. It was a great learning experience, though ultimately, it didn't gain the traction we'd hoped for. Well, even ventures that don't pan out teach valuable lessons, I offered politely. I imagine it helped shape your approach to business now. Absolutely, Mr. Graham, he agreed readily. Failure can be an excellent teacher. As we continued talking about his work, his family's company, his ambitions, I tried to push past my initial reservations. He was intelligent, articulate, and seemed genuinely fond of Eleanor. Yet, there was an undercurrent I couldn't quite pinpoint, a sense of entitlement perhaps, that kept me slightly guarded. After a while, I decided it was time to address the elephant in the room, the things that might matter to a family like the Thornes. Julian, there's something I feel I should be upfront about, I said, my tone shifting to something more serious. Julian sat up a little straighter, his polite mask becoming slightly more attentive, perhaps a bit wary. Yes, sir? As Eleanor may have told you, I've worked as a master plumber my entire adult life. I dropped out of high school and went straight into the trades. Julian's expression didn't flicker. He nodded respectfully. Eleanor mentioned you are highly skilled, sir. That's demanding, essential work. I have a great deal of respect for that. His response was smooth, perhaps too smooth. I hesitated for a beat, then pressed on. And there's something else. Eleanor and we aren't related by blood. This time, his eyes widened almost imperceptibly, a flicker of surprise crossing his features before his composure snapped back into place. He glanced quickly at Eleanor, then back at me, his voice remaining steady. I, I wasn't aware of that, sir. But, he added quickly, perhaps sensing the need for a diplomatic recovery, honestly, that doesn't change anything. If it weren't for your love and dedication in raising Eleanor, shaping her into the incredible woman she is, then she and I would never have had the chance to meet. His words, though possibly calculated, still resonated, touching a chord deep within me. Thank you for saying that, Julian, I replied gruffly, clearing my throat. Just then, Eleanor jumped in, smiling brightly, completely unfazed. Yeah, I guess I never really made a big deal of it, she said easily. Because to me, Daddy has always just been my dad. My real dad. She looked at me, her eyes filled with affection. The blood stuff never mattered, not even for a second. And being a plumber? Daddy, I've always been so proud of how hard you work, how you can fix anything. Julian was silent for a moment, observing the easy affection between us, perhaps genuinely surprised by Eleanor's candor. Then, he offered a warm, seemingly genuine smile. That sounds exactly like the Eleanor I know, he said softly. Strong, honest, doesn't care about superficial nonsense. I figured she wasn't the type to worry about things like pedigrees, so frankly, the thought never crossed my mind that I needed to inquire. He turned his gaze back to me, his expression serious, earnest. Mr. Graham, it's clear that Eleanor became the remarkable, principled person she is because she was raised by a man of integrity and sincerity like you. I felt an unexpected warmth spread through my chest, my eyes beginning to burn slightly. Damn it. Thank you, Julian, I managed, my voice a bit thick. Please, take good care of my girl. Julian met my gaze and gave a firm, decisive nod. I promise you, sir, I will cherish her and make her happy. Seeing the exchange, Eleanor beamed, reaching out to squeeze both our hands. Thank you, Daddy. Thank you, Julian. I'm really, truly happy right now. And with that, the initial meeting concluded on a surprisingly warm and positive note, easing many of my unspoken fears. Then, after months of planning and escalating stress, the wedding day finally arrived. It was a lavish affair at a high-end hotel overlooking Central Park, chosen and largely dictated by the Thorns. Since Julian's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thorne, had been perpetually too busy with work commitments and social obligations to attend any of the pre-wedding dinners or planning sessions, this was the first time our families were formally meeting. As I sat at my assigned table during the cocktail hour preceding the ceremony, I couldn't help but notice the sideways glances and hushed whispers directed my way from Julian's impeccably dressed relatives. The polite murmur of conversation seemed to dip whenever I caught someone's eye. I couldn't make out the exact words, but the context was clear they were discussing the bride's father, the plumber from upstate New York. Eventually, Mr. Thorne approached, his wife hovering beside him like an accessory. Mr. Graham, he said, his tone stiff, his handshake brief and cool. His face was a mask of strained politeness. Mrs. Thorne offered a tight, forced smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. Mr. Thorne, Mrs. Thorne, a pleasure to finally meet you both, I replied evenly, keeping my own expression neutral. Arthur Graham, Eleanor's father. Initially, the conversation skirted around safe, impersonal topics, the unseasonably warm weather, the stunning floral arrangements, the view from the ballroom. But inevitably, the focus shifted, circling back to me, the outlier in their rarefied world. Mr. Thorne cleared his throat, adjusting his silk tie. So, Mr. Graham, he began, his tone casual, but probing. Julian mentioned you're in the construction trade? Plumbing, I believe? That's correct, I confirmed. Master plumber. Yes. Fascinating. May I ask which university department you graduated from? Engineering, perhaps? Before I could clarify that I hadn't attended university, let alone graduated, he barreled on. We have several cousins and nephews, you see, graduates from Cornell and MIT, who hold executive positions at major engineering firms and development corporations. He name-dropped a few impressive companies. Just as I opened my mouth to correct his assumption, Mrs. Thorne interjected smoothly, though her words carried a subtle barb. "Oh no, darling," she said, touching her husband's arm lightly. "If I recall correctly, Julian mentioned Mr. Graham entered the workforce directly after secondary school and has been working hands-on ever since." Her emphasis on hands-on dripped with condescension. Her feigned forgetfulness about my exact education level felt like a deliberate slight. Her words hung in the air, leaving me momentarily speechless, the implication clear. I quickly regained my composure, refusing to be ruffled. "Yes, Mrs. Thorne, that's accurate," I replied calmly. "I completed my apprenticeship and have been a licensed plumber for many years. I started on the tools and now also focus on training the next generation." But Mrs. Thorne seemed uninterested in my actual experience or qualifications. She waved away my explanation with a flick of her wrist and pressed forward, her gaze sharp and appraising. "Ah, I see. And while we're clarifying things," she continued, her voice dropping slightly, but losing none of its edge, "there was something else Julian mentioned. Is it true that you are not, in fact, Eleanor's biological father?" The question, though perhaps predictable, still felt like a blow. "Yes, that is correct," I confirmed, meeting her gaze steadily. "Eleanor and I are not connected by blood. But," I added firmly, my voice unwavering, "I have raised her as my own daughter since she was an infant. She is my family, in every way that truly matters." To Mrs. Thorne, who was now scrutinizing me with unconcealed disdain, I spoke my truth with quiet conviction. Mr. Thorne then added his piece, his expression one of profound distaste. "We must admit, we only became aware of Eleanor's rather complicated background quite recently, just before the ceremony planning began in earnest. It has been, shall we say, something of a shock for our family, for the Thorne lineage." I kept my voice level, refusing to let their snobbery provoke me. "Regardless of biology, Mr. Thorne, Eleanor is my beloved daughter. That fact has never been in question, and it never will be. My commitment to supporting and loving her remains absolute, as it always has." Mrs. Thorne let out a delicate, disbelieving scoff, a barely audible sound through her perfectly sculpted nose. "You truly believe, Mr. Graham, that love alone is sufficient to navigate the complexities of raising a child properly?" She counted, her voice laced with incredulity. "Raising someone else's offspring. It must have been quite the undertaking, quite the burden for a man in your position. Has Eleanor never expressed any curiosity about her biological progenitor? Her real father? One might imagine he held a more suitable profession than plumbing after all." Her words, so deliberately cruel, so dismissive of my life's work and the deep bond I shared with Eleanor, nearly sent me over the edge. I could feel the heat rising in my neck, my fists clenching involuntarily at my sides. But I took a deep, silent breath, locking eyes with her, and reminded myself, don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. This is Eleanor's day. And just then, as if summoned by the sheer force of my will to protect her, Eleanor appeared at the entrance to the reception area, radiant in her wedding dress. The sight of her, so beautiful, so full of hope, instantly grounded me. All the hardships, the sacrifices, the years of love and struggle, it all culminated in this moment. Thinking about everything Eleanor had overcome, the strength and grace she possessed, my heart swelled with an overwhelming tide of emotion. All the anger and frustration I'd felt moments before dissolved, washed away by pure, unadulterated pride and boundless love for my daughter. We moved to the adjacent chapel for the ceremony. Walking Eleanor down the aisle, her arm linked through mine, was surreal. I held her hand tightly, whispering words of encouragement, my silent prayer that the rest of the day would proceed without further incident, for her sake. As the ceremony concluded, watching Eleanor exchange vows with Julian, seeing the genuine joy on her face, or what I desperately hoped was genuine joy, I felt a profound sense of relief mixed with a father's fierce, protective love. More than anything, I just wanted her to be happy, truly happy. That simple, powerful desire filled me with a quiet pride that momentarily overshadowed the earlier unpleasantness. Later, during the reception, the emotional toll of the day caught up with me. I slipped away to the men's room to splash some cold water on my face and gather my thoughts. As I pushed open the heavy oak door, I overheard snippets of conversation from a group of Julian's friends gathered near the sinks. Unbelievable, right? Did you see the Thorn's gift versus his? Yeah, brutal. Talk about sending a message. And the toast from Old Man Thorn. Passive aggressive much? They chuckled, oblivious to my presence. I didn't fully grasp the context, but a sense of unease settled over me. Dismissing it as drunken wedding banter, I rinsed my face, straightened my tie, and headed back to the grand ballroom. As I re-entered, I noticed a few more guests glancing my way, stifling chuckles or whispering behind their hands. A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. I found my assigned seat at a table near the back and sat down. My eyes immediately fell upon the elegantly printed place card positioned in front of my setting. Next to my name, Arthur Graham, were the carefully calligraphed words, "Father of the bride courtesy title only." Below that, in smaller but still legible script, it read, "Background, manual laborer, educationally deficient." The overheard conversation in the restroom slammed back into my consciousness with brutal clarity. They weren't just talking about gifts or toasts. They were talking about this. About me. I stared at the card, disbelief warring with a sickening certainty. The calligraphy blurred. Around me, the muffled laughter I'd noticed earlier seemed louder now, directed mocking. A tidal wave of shame and white-hot anger surged through me, so potent it made my hands tremble. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate, calculated cruelty. But years of biting my tongue, of absorbing slights for Eleanor's sake, kicked in. I knew, instinctively, that losing my temper here, making a scene, would only play into their narrative. See? Just like we said they'd whisper. Uncouth, unrefined, can't handle himself. So I lowered my head, pretending to study the menu, praying for the earth to swallow me whole, waiting for the attention to inevitably shift elsewhere. It was at that moment that Julian and his parents materialized beside my table, their expressions ranging from Julian's uncomfortable avoidance to his parents' smug satisfaction. I looked up, forcing myself to meet their eyes, though my voice was strained. "Julian," I began, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "This place card. Surely this is some kind of mistake? A misplaced joke, perhaps? Part of the entertainment?" Even as I said it, I knew how hollow the words sounded. It was a desperate, last-ditch attempt to salvage some semblance of normalcy, to pretend this ugliness wasn't happening. But Julian, avoiding my gaze, replied with chilling coldness, shattering any lingering hope. "No mistake, Mr. Graham. It reflects reality." His parents, standing slightly behind him like puppeteers, swiftly chimed in, their voices dripping with disdain. "You and Eleanor aren't truly family after all," Mrs. Thorne said, her smile sharp as glass. "Just a temporary arrangement, born of circumstance." Mr. Thorne added, his voice stern, "It's frankly pitiful that the girl had to endure an upbringing with such a poorly educated, frankly shabby parent figure." From this day forward, Mrs. Thorne concluded, delivering the final blow, "We must insist you cease involving yourself in her life. For her own good, you understand." The polite, articulate young man I thought I'd met vanished completely. In his place stood someone who looked at me with the same icy contempt as his parents. their values apparently his own. My mind struggled to reconcile the Julian I thought I knew with the cruel stranger standing before me. My head spun. The room felt simultaneously too large and suffocatingly small. Then, like an avenging angel, Eleanor was there, rushing towards us, her face pale with fury, her eyes blazing. She had clearly seen the place card, heard their final pronouncements. Ignoring Julian and his parents entirely, she grabbed my hand, her grip fierce and unwavering. "Daddy," she said, her voice low but ringing with conviction. "Let's go." "Yeah, Eleanor," I choked out, my voice thick with unshed tears of anger and humiliation. "Let's go home." As we turned and walked towards the exit, leaving the stunned wedding party and the gawking guests behind, we could hear the inevitable whispers trailing after us. "Did you see that?" The bride just walked out, in the middle of her own reception. Well, like father, like daughter, I suppose. The cool spring night air outside felt like a slap against our heated skin as we emerged from the overly warm, suffocating atmosphere of the hotel. Our footsteps echoed unnaturally loudly on the pavement as we walked swiftly, silently, towards the parking garage. The cacophony of the reception, the music, the laughter, the clinking glasses faded behind us, replaced by a heavy, ringing silence between us, thick with unspoken emotions. "Daddy, can I have the keys?" Eleanor asked softly, her voice strained, once we reached my old pickup truck parked amongst the luxury sedans. I wordlessly pulled the keys from my pocket and dropped them into her outstretched hand. She slid into the driver's seat, her movements jerky with suppressed anger. The engine rumbled to life, and she pulled out of the parking space slowly, carefully navigating the garage ramps. Outside, the glittering lights of the New York City skyline across the river blurred into streaks of orange and white as we merged onto the highway heading north, back towards the familiar quiet of upstate. Inside the cab of the truck, the silence stretched, punctuated only by the rhythmic hum of the tires on the asphalt and our own ragged breathing. I stared out the passenger window, watching the city lights recede, trying to process the sheer, calculated cruelty of what had just transpired. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The weight of the evening pressed down on us. Then, Eleanor broke the silence, her voice quiet but firm. "Daddy, thank you." Her words startled me. I turned to look at her profile, illuminated by the dashboard lights. "Thank me." "Eleanor, why on earth would you thank me?" "Because," she replied, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. "Even after everything they said, everything they did, you didn't lose your temper. You stayed calm. For me. There was no point in getting angry, Eleanor." I sighed, the bitterness rising in my throat. "This, all of this, it happened because of me, because of who I am, what I do." A dry, self-deprecating laugh escaped me, but Eleanor quickly, fiercely, denied it. "No, that's not true, Daddy," she insisted, glancing at me sharply. "This happened because I made a terrible mistake, because I chose the wrong man, someone shallow and weak who would let his family treat people that way. And Daddy," she continued, her voice trembling slightly with emotion, "if getting married means accepting people who would deliberately hurt you like that, then that marriage isn't worth anything to me. Not a damn thing." Her fierce loyalty, her unwavering defense of me, hit me hard. Tears I hadn't allowed myself to shed earlier pricked at my eyes. I knew deep down that my determination to raise her alone, my lack of formal education, my blue-collar job, all things the Thorns despised, had sometimes meant sacrifices for her, perhaps made her feel different growing up. There must have been times she felt lonely or wished for a more conventional family. And yet, through it all, she had never once blamed me, never once made me feel inadequate. She had always embraced me, loved me unconditionally with a warmth that defied logic or societal expectations. "Eleanor," I started, but the words caught in my throat. "Daddy," she said softly, her voice regaining its quiet strength. I have always been proud. Proud that the man who loves me more than anyone in the world, the man who is my father in every way that counts, isn't even related to me by blood. It makes our bond even more special, don't you think? Oh, Eleanor, I finally managed, my voice thick. I'm the lucky one, sweetheart. Truly, having you in my life. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. Eleanor offered a small, watery smile, reaching over to briefly squeeze my hand resting on the console. Daddy, she said after another moment of quiet driving, today, it made me realize something important. What's that? I asked, turning towards her again. That our bond, the connection between you and me, it's stronger, more real than any fancy wedding or family name or bloodline could ever be. Her expression in the dim light was serious, deeply sincere. I listened quietly, absorbing her words. All those years, she continued, her voice soft but clear. All the days and nights you spent raising me, Daddy. The scraped knees you bandaged, the bedtime stories you read, the school plays you never missed, the laughter, the arguments, even the tears. Everything we shared, everything we weathered together, it built something solid, something unbreakable between us. She glanced at me again, a gentle smile touching her lips. So let's just keep walking our path together, okay? Just us. Yeah, Eleanor, I agreed, my voice husky with emotion. Of course, we will. Always. Outside, the darkness had fully enveloped the landscape. The truck continued its steady journey north, carrying us away from the glittering cruelty of the city, back towards the quiet familiarity of home. After a while, Eleanor spoke again, a touch of mischievousness entering her tone despite the lingering sadness. Daddy, actually, about that marriage registration form we were supposed to file tomorrow? She shot me an apologetic, almost sheepish look. I looked at her, puzzled. What about it? Well, I might have, torn it up. Torn it up? I repeated, startled, then couldn't suppress a sudden bark of laughter, the first genuine release of tension I'd felt all evening. Yeah, she confirmed, a grin finally breaking through. Ripped it into tiny pieces. Very satisfying, actually. I'm planning on mailing the confetti back to Julian tomorrow morning. Special delivery. Laughter rumbled in my chest, mingling with relief. I see, I chuckled. Honestly, Eleanor, I think that's probably for the best. Yeah, she sighed, the smile fading slightly, replaced by a look of determination. Me too. So, I asked gently, what happens now? What are your plans? Eleanor considered for a moment, chewing on her lower lip. Honestly, Daddy, I'm not entirely sure yet, and I don't think I need to rush to figure it out. You're absolutely right, I agreed. Take all the time you need. No pressure. I think. I think I need some time to just breathe, to reflect on things, on myself. And maybe, she added hesitantly, maybe come back home for a little while, if that's okay. Okay? I exclaimed, reaching over to squeeze her shoulder. Eleanor, that's more than okay. It's a fantastic idea. Your room is always waiting for you. I'll always be here for you, sweetheart. Always on your side, no matter what. Thanks, Daddy, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion again. The truck rolled on through the night, the silence returning, but this time it felt different, warm, comforting, filled with the unspoken strength of our reaffirmed connection. Eleanor, I said after a few more miles, feeling hungry? Want me to whip up something simple when we get home? Her face lit up instantly. Ooh, yes. Could you make your famous scrambled eggs and toast? You got it, I promised. World-famous scrambled eggs coming right up. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever twists and turns life threw our way, I knew one thing for sure. I would face them with Eleanor by my side. With that silent vow solidifying in my heart, we continued our journey home, leaving the wreckage of the wedding far behind us. A few days later, a brief segment on the evening news caught our attention. Thorne Estates, the prestigious real estate empire built by Julian's family, had unexpectedly filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Eleanor stared at the television screen, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Daddy, Thorne Estates went bankrupt?" I glanced at the screen, watching the reporter detail the company's sudden collapse amidst rumors of mismanagement and overwhelming debt. A complex, unreadable knot tightened in my chest. It wasn't satisfaction, exactly, but a grim sense of inevitability. Later that same afternoon, the doorbell rang, startling us both. Wiping my hands on a dish towel, I went to answer it. Standing on my modest porch were Julian Thorne and his parents. The memory of the wedding reception, the sneering faces, the cruel words, the humiliating place card came flooding back with uncomfortable intensity. A familiar mix of anger and sadness stirred within me. "Mr. Graham," Julian began, his voice low, his posture slumped. He looked diminished. He bowed his head deeply, a gesture that seemed awkward and unpracticed. His parents stood stiffly behind him, their expressions a mixture of resentment and forced humility. The icy confidence I'd seen on Julian's face at the wedding was gone, replaced by what looked like genuine remorse, perhaps even desperation. His parents, however, seemed largely unchanged beneath the surface. Mrs. Thorne conspicuously avoided my gaze, examining my porch railing with intense interest, while Mr. Thorne stood silently, his jaw tight, radiating barely concealed displeasure. I wanted to offer my sincerest apologies for what transpired at the wedding," Julian stammered, his voice trembling slightly. He bowed again, lower this time. "My behavior, and my family's. It was disgraceful, inexcusable. Pressured by my parents' expectations, I acted shamefully, cowardly. I deeply, truly regret the immense pain and disrespect I caused you and Eleanor, Mr. Graham." I could sense a degree of sincerity in Julian's halting words, a stark contrast to his earlier arrogance. But the rigid, uncomfortable demeanor of his parents spoke volumes. Their pride, though battered, clearly remained intact. It felt strongly as though they were only here because Julian had dragged them, perhaps out of some last-ditch effort to salvage something. Though what, I couldn't imagine. "It's far too late for apologies, Julian," I replied calmly, my voice devoid of inflection. The damage was done. The bridges were burned to ash on their wedding day. Holding their gaze, I continued, my tone remaining level, almost conversational. "Tell me, when we first met, did my name Arthur Graham ring any bells for you? In a business context?" Julian looked up, confusion flickering in his eyes. I'm not sure what you mean, sir." "Allow me to clarify," I said, letting the words land slowly, deliberately. "Until very recently, I was your family company's single largest shareholder. In fact, I held just over 2/3 of Thorne Estates' voting stock." Absolute silence greeted my statement. Julian and his parents stared at me, their faces draining of color, expressions frozen in disbelief. Speechless, I let the silence stretch, allowing the weight of my revelation to sink in. A shareholder controlling over 2/3 of a company's stock holds immense power, the power to make or break crucial decisions, even to force the dissolution of the company itself. In essence, they hold the company's fate in their hands. The truth was, I had never intended for them to know. My plan had been simple. After the wedding, I would quietly gift the entire block of shares to Eleanor, securing her financial future. It had taken me years, decades of disciplined saving, careful research, and shrewd investing, often late at night after Eleanor was asleep, fueled by coffee and a fierce determination that my daughter would never face the financial insecurity I had known. I started with the modest life insurance payout Catherine had left behind, and not just money, but her love, her faith in our future. I treated it as sacred trust. Slowly, cautiously, I learned the intricacies of the market, turning that small nest egg into a substantial fortune, enough to ensure Eleanor and I could live comfortably, free from worry. Part of that strategy involved acquiring a controlling interest in Thorne Estates, a company whose potential I recognized long before Julian entered the picture. It was meant to be my wedding gift to my daughter. But their actions at the wedding, their blatant cruelty and disrespect, changed everything. The day after Eleanor and I walked out of that reception, I contacted a trusted associate, a long-term investment partner who had expressed interest in Thorne Estates years ago. I sold him my entire stake, every last share. Since I had always used intermediaries and never attended shareholder meetings in person, preferring anonymity, the Thornes had never known my face, never connected the name Arthur Graham on their shareholder register with a plumber marrying into their family. To them, I was just a name on paper, an abstract entity. After my shares changed hands, combined perhaps with pre-existing mismanagement or enemies they had made along the way, the company's already precarious financial situation apparently deteriorated rapidly. Confidence plummeted. Creditors called in loans. Ultimately, the new controlling shareholders, along with others likely eager to see the Thornes fall, voted to dissolve the company and liquidate its assets. A year has passed since that tumultuous period. The echoes of that disastrous wedding day have reshaped all our lives. Julian and his parents, I hear through the grapevine, lost nearly everything. The bankruptcy, coupled with ensuing lawsuits and scandals, shattered their reputation and decimated their fortune. Blamed by relatives, ostracized by their former social circle, their lives reportedly spiraled into ruin, a grim testament to the consequences of their arrogance. Meanwhile, my daughter, Eleanor, chose a path illuminated by resilience and compassion. She refused to let the bitterness of that experience define her. Instead, she rose from the ashes of her broken engagement and became a source of hope for others facing adversity. Daddy, guess what? The NPO paperwork is officially approved. We're incorporated. She burst through my door just the other day, her face glowing with accomplishment and excitement. Eleanor, that's fantastic news. Congratulations, I exclaimed, pulling her into a tight hug. You've worked incredibly hard for this. I knew you could do it. Using a portion of the investment capital I'd offered her, seed money for your future, I'd called it, Eleanor founded the Next Step Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting children from single-parent households and low-income families in the New York City area, providing job skills training, educational resources, and mentorship. She poured her heart and soul into it, driven by her own experiences and a fierce desire to make a tangible difference. It's all thanks to you, Daddy, she said, her eyes sparkling with grateful tears. You believed in me, supported my crazy idea when it mattered most. Through her tireless work with the foundation, Eleanor met Nathan Riley, a kind, dedicated elementary school teacher who was raising his young daughter alone after his wife passed away. His daughter was one of the first children enrolled in Next Steps programs. A friendship blossomed, built on shared values and mutual respect, eventually deepening into love. They married quietly last fall, a simple, joyful ceremony surrounded by close friends and family, the real kind. Together, they've built a loving, stable, happy home filled with warmth and laughter. Mr. Graham, Nathan told me earnestly not long ago, his sincerity evident. Eleanor hasn't just changed my life. She's transformed my daughter Chloe's world too. I will forever be grateful for her kindness, her strength, and the light she brings into our lives. Seeing Eleanor now truly fulfilled, radiating happiness, making a real impact on the world, fills my heart with a quiet, profound joy. Despite the ugliness she endured, despite the cruelty inflicted upon her at that wedding, she not only survived but thrived, finding her own path to authentic happiness. Eleanor, I said recently, watching her play with her stepdaughter in the backyard, you really did it. You built something amazing. I'm so incredibly proud of the woman you've become. She looked up, shading her eyes from the sun. and smiled that radiant smile of hers. "Daddy," she replied thoughtfully, "you know, I think maybe it's because of what I went through back then, the pain and the injustice, that I can appreciate this happiness so much more now. True happiness, we learned, isn't about avoiding hardship. It often lies just beyond it, discovered in the resilience we find within ourselves and the love that sustains us." Eleanor and I learned that lesson firsthand, etched onto our hearts. Since retiring and moving in with Eleanor, Nathan, and now our granddaughter Chloe, my life has entered a new, unexpectedly joyful chapter. The big house in NYC felt too large for just them, and my old place upstate felt too quiet for just me. Combining households just made sense. These days, honestly, nothing brings me more simple, unadulterated joy than spending time with my granddaughter, Chloe. "Grandpa, Grandpa, let's go to the park. Can we? Please?" 5-year-old Chloe tugged relentlessly at my hand yesterday morning, her eyes wide with hopeful excitement. All right, you little whirlwind. Let's go," I chuckled, gently patting her curly head and allowing myself to be pulled towards the door. Just holding her tiny, trusting hand in mine, listening to her endless stream of chatter, seeing the world anew through her bright, curious eyes, it makes every past struggle, every sacrifice, feel infinitely worthwhile. Watching her grow, teaching her how the faucet works or how to properly hold a wrench, a plastic one, for now, has become the quiet, central purpose of my days. "Daddy, Nathan, we have news," Eleanor announced excitedly a few weeks ago, gathering us in the living room, her face beaming. "We just came from the doctor's office, and we found out the baby's gender." She paused dramatically, building the suspense. "It's a boy. Chloe's going to be a big sister." The news that another grandchild, a grandson this time, was on the way filled the house with even more joy and anticipation, weaving another strong thread into the tapestry of our unconventional, loving family. In this world, it's undeniably true that many people still measure happiness and success by visible, easily quantifiable markers. Blood ties, prestigious degrees, well, traditional family structures. And I understand the appeal. Those things offer a clear, if often superficial, sense of order and hierarchy. Eleanor said to me recently, curled up on the sofa beside me, "Daddy, our family might not look like the ones on TV commercials, but we're happy, aren't we? Really happy." "Yes, Eleanor," I replied, putting my arm around her shoulder. "We absolutely are." "Blood isn't what makes us family," I continued, echoing the conviction I'd held onto for decades. "What truly matters, what binds us together, is the love we share, the support we give, the history we've built, choice by choice, day by day." Happiness, I've learned, comes in countless forms, often found in the most unexpected places. Even if someone's life doesn't fit society's narrow definition of ideal, it doesn't mean they are less worthy, less fortunate, or less capable of profound joy. Sometimes, simply shifting your perspective, choosing to see the richness in your own unique circumstances, can reveal the hidden seeds of happiness already present. And how you choose to nurture those seeds with love, resilience, gratitude can truly transform your entire life. "I love you, Grandpa," Chloe murmured sleepily last night, snuggled against my chest as I read her a bedtime story. In that simple, pure moment, I felt a wave of contentment so deep, so complete, it settled into my very bones. Blood ties, diplomas, job titles, bank balances, none of it holds a candle to this. This feeling, right here, surrounded by the messy, imperfect, beautiful love of my family, this is my real happiness. This is everything.